Okay, we are recording and let's get started. Quick introductions. Ben Greiner, President, Forget Computers. Chad Calise, introduce yourself. How about that?
Hi. I'm Advisory CISO. I'm the information security guy.
And Michelle, introduce.
Hi, Michelle Charles, Project Management and Client Services.
Okay. And this is our weekly open meeting for clients, and we're going to record this and share it with clients. And as clients come in and out of the meeting, in fact, I need to get my waiting room open. We can, if you see any chats or questions come in, please draw them to my attention, Michelle, because sometimes I miss them when I start talking.
It's easy to do.
Yeah, okay. So one of the things we wanted to talk about again is kind of a holdover from last week is Zoom. This is a conversation that won't
go away.
And my screen went away just as I said that, so I was like, what's going on? It won't go away, and we still continue to hear people kind of freaking out a little bit about it. So I'm not overly concerned, and we may learn more later that says we should be. But Chad, do you want to mention anything about that? I have some things I want to mention, but.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, it's tricky when there's so many of us that are having to kind of hustle. You know, we take it for granted that we've been working this way for many years, and it's not that way for most people. And we're lucky because we can work remotely. There's a lot of folks that don't have the luxury. And so it's challenging on a couple of fronts. First, just the general fluency. If we haven't used these tools before, that's tricky. But the second is just stories in the media. Initially they were just trying to make everyone aware that, you know, people were Zoom bombing and doing these things that were easy to solve for, right? With a little bit of adjustment of the settings, that was easy to do. But as time has gone on, you know, it's a lot of probably market manipulation. Who knows? I mean, some of this media may be driven by competitors. Maybe, you know, it gets political, and that makes it tricky for folks that are trying to learn, because now, in addition to the regular learning curve, they have to sift through some of this misinformation, which isn't awesome. And today, or last couple of days, there's been another kind of barrage of this on top of, you know, New York City's schools banning use of Zoom last week, and a lot of those kinds of challenges, is that a lot of, you know, 500,000 credentials have been sold in the dark markets, you know, Zoom accounts. And, you know, to read a little more deeply into this issue, we would learn that that's not technically true. What is true is folks that have been compromised in the past that have Zoom accounts, you know, criminals figured out that, oh, these folks also have Zoom accounts. And the only reason they were able to do that these criminals were able to do that, is because people are reusing passwords in multiple places, right? So if my password is fluffy123, and I use that for a Hotmail account, or I used it for a LinkedIn account, or some other account that was, you know, bought and sold in the past in one of these crimes, now they've figured out that they use fluffy123 for their Zoom account, and they've sold those on the web for like 0.002 of a cent, I think, is what these went for on the dark market, right? So they're not even making money on these. Some of them were released free, like a lot of university accounts, a lot of student accounts were released for free on these dark markets. And the solution is really simple: is just don't use the same password in two places. Use a different password for each service. Make sure it's strong, meaning it's long. It doesn't have to have a lot of complexity. It can be a really long sentence, but something that makes it really hard for someone to you know, make use of. And it's not a technology challenge, it's a behavioral one.
I'm convinced that if it was another company other than Zoom that was the golden child when we all started working from home, then they would be the ones in the news taking all the flack for things that they're not doing perfectly, which in many cases are not even their fault. It's the fault of people not following best security practices. Now, that being said, we've tried to calm our clients in saying, you know, I would not run away from Zoom, especially our clients who use Ring Central, which leverages Zoom. That's an additional layer wrapped around Zoom, which is a little different. But I know this past week we've had some clients, their clients have been concerned about using Zoom. So we're trying to share information with our clients about how they can share information with their clients. And I just got distracted because it's snowing outside, but.
Oh my gosh, it is.
So I'm going to share my screen.
Not here yet.
Yeah, let me share my screen. And can you guys see our support.forgetcomputers.com page? Okay, so this is the page that's available to the public, and the search works really well, but you can also go to Forget Computers. And we started this area under Ring Central, and this new one we added, Secure Your Meetings, talks about a few things I just want to touch base on right now. And that is, Zoom bombing is not unique to Zoom. This can happen with any type of hosted meeting if you're inviting the entire public in and not having some basic safeguards. So the two biggest ways or easiest ways to lock down a meeting is to either require a passcode, or Zoom and Ring Central Meetings that uses Zoom, they have the option for a waiting room. And that's what we've chosen to do. We've chosen to do the waiting room, where we let people in. And if you need to, you can kick people back out into the waiting room. I find that personally, I just think that's a little easier to use than sharing a passcode, making sure everyone has that passcode, changing that passcode, making sure that passcode doesn't get out there. But certainly you could do the passcode. You could do both. You could do a waiting room and a passcode. So here's what our waiting room looks like. And we've got some links on how to turn this feature on for your account. If you're an admin, and we're an admin for our clients, so if we haven't done this for you already, let us know, and we can not just turn on your waiting room, but we can enforce it, meaning require the waiting room for all of your meetings, as opposed to letting your employees decide whether they should have a waiting room or not. So that's what we did on our side. We enforced a waiting room for our meetings, and then we're enforcing it for those clients that have had an opportunity to share that with their team, because obviously you don't want to just surprise them, right? With, hey, we're going to turn on the waiting room, and suddenly people are like, what is this? I don't understand. And then further down, kind of as an additional comment, because these are some questions we got this week that I addressed specifically with a client, and that is the issue with Zoom sending analytics to Facebook. That was specific to the iOS app. I'm sorry, I'm getting a phone call. I got to figure out how to mute my phone calls.
I was getting it too.
While I'm in a meeting.
Okay.
So the Facebook issue was specific to iOS, which I don't think a lot of our clients were using. But in addition, if they were using the Ring Central app, that wasn't even an issue, because the issue was with Zoom trying to make it easy to authenticate. So they tied into Facebook for authentication. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Chad. That's what I read. They tied into Facebook for authentication. And as soon as they found out that they were leaking information to Facebook, they got rid of that feature. So you can no longer log in with Zoom through Facebook. And
it didn't matter. It didn't matter if you had a Facebook account or not. They were sharing all of that information. It's just kind of like, Facebook's just really tricky, because, even if you're not on Facebook and you work really hard to maintain your privacy in that sense, all someone has to do is say, happy birthday, Ben, on your birthday somewhere, and the system is smart enough to then map your name and your identity with your correct birthday and other stuff. So it's really tricky to try to maintain anonymity in this day and age with all of this data collection going on. And I think Zoom, to your earlier point, Ben, they were under, it's snowing here now too, like crazy. Now it's really hard, without a lot of scrutiny and some inconvenience on our part as consumers, to avoid that collection. And Zoom is doing as good a job as anybody. I think most of these companies, they're not doing anything proactively. They're asking for forgiveness more than permission. And that's just the age we live in.
So there's also one more document I just want to make sure everyone's aware of. If you are using RingCentral meetings, they have a security response because of everything in the news. And if you scroll down to should end users of RingCentral meetings powered by Zoom be concerned about security and privacy, and they address some of these issues and how their implementation was not affected by this. We may learn later that their implementation was affected by something else, no doubt. But going back to the idea that we all have to be responsible for our own security and privacy as best we can. I think there's a lot organizations can do to protect themselves rather than just running away from Zoom and going somewhere else where they're going to continue poor security practices and have similar issues, right, Chad?
Yeah, that's correct. I believe that.
So related to that is, let's see. Oh, well, before we leave RingCentral, this is the admin console for RingCentral meetings, and there are a ton of options here. Encryption turned on, waiting room turned on. There are ways to turn these on, turn them off, and lock them. So if you have any issues or questions, or you're missing a feature, or you want to enforce a feature and you don't know how to do that, let us know. We can help you. And then I wanted to mention again, we mentioned this last week, we're still trying to get this rolled out to everyone, but we have a online security awareness training program through PII Protect. And with all the security issues going on, especially as people are working from home, it's really important to train your employees on what to look out for and how to be more secure online. And we're going to, as part of the COVID-19 initiatives that everyone's trying to, help everyone get through this, we've been granted a license for all of our clients for the yearly security awareness training, the basic level of training that really everyone should go through. And so we want to make sure our clients have access to that. And in addition to that, if you schedule a meeting with Chad and I, we can do a dark web scan, which shows you the vulnerability that may be out there already with your domain. And Chad, I always forget the exact, I've been pwned. What's the website for that?
Yeah, I've been pwned. Have I been pwned?
Have I been pwned?
Yeah. And pwned is just hacker speak for being hacked. When someone figures out our password and gets into our email or a social media account, that's owned or pwned. And this site was built by Troy Hunt. He's this fantastic security researcher. He's bona fide. There's no danger in sharing information with this site or your email. This is really an asset to all of us. And it's integrated with 1Password and a lot of the security tools, because it's basically an aggregate of all the data sets of everyone in the world that's ever been in a public data breach. And so it can check, to see if there's anything recent that we need to be aware of. It can let us know if the passwords we're using are in these data sets and we should change some passwords. I mean, there's a lot of really nice functionality to tools like 1Password now that are powered by this site and its functionality. It's really cool. It's important.
Yeah, so this is the one site where I would recommend you put your email address in and see where your account has been breached or credentials have been given up. Nothing that any one individual did. It's just that, if I put my email address in here, I'll see Adobe breaches, I'll see LinkedIn breaches, I'll see a bunch of accounts that I forgot I had that have given up my credentials. And that's why it's so important to not reuse the same password over and over. And if you want to check a password that you do use a lot, this is on the same website. You can check your passwords here. It'll tell you if your passwords are known, right? Is that right, Chad? If they're out there.
That's right. And so, it's April, so I think it was last year. The Evite was a big one. That was a pretty big recent one, and a lot of people were involved in that. That's the kind of thing. Like if I get a notice, you can plug your email in here to say let me know when I'm included, right? when my email address has been included in one of these breaches. And if you get a notice like that, it's a prompt to say, hey, change your password.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, if you're using that password anywhere else, change those too,
Yeah.
right? Because it's this password reuse that's the biggest challenge. You know, a lot of this criminal hacking activity isn't super spy very interesting. It's just someone, you know, either using an automated tool or manually getting a piece of information like a password from a breach and using it against every other website on the, you know, on the net. And so these things are lessons potentially if we go about them in the right way. And password reuse is, you know, we should just focus on that one, because in the case of Zoom, you know, I read a lot of comments and forums earlier this morning, people complaining about Zoom, like, why don't they enforce 2FA, you know, two-factor authentication, and why don't they do this and why don't they do that? No, the truth is, even if they did, you know, implement two-factor authentication or 2FA, about 1% of us would use it. And so it's really, we shouldn't rely on technology to provide security for us or companies.
Right. Or
really
people would say, people would say, oh, it's too hard to use, I'm not going to use Zoom, you know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Unfortunately. And so
what's that balance?
This is one tool.
Ease of use versus security.
Totally. And it's that balance that makes it really hard for everyday folks, because most of these tools like 2FA, it's inconvenient. And for some people, it's really complicated, like elderly folks that haven't used technology in most of their lives. You know, it's kind of unreasonable to ask them to suddenly start adding all these tools and all these steps and these workflows to someone like that, right? Culturally. But how I've been pwned, that's what's great about this site is, you know, lots of different kinds of people, no matter what our ability level is, we can go to this site. It's really clear. The instructions are very clear and helpful. We can get some value out of this to help protect ourselves and our families and friends.
Yeah, and one of the ways I protect myself and our entire team, because we have the Teams version of 1Password. Chad, you mentioned it as a password manager. And currently 1Password is offering unlimited trial, meaning that I think it's a 14 or maybe a 30-day trial typically is what they have. You can sign up right now, and that free trial will last at least as long as this COVID situation, work from home, lasts. We don't know when it will end. Obviously, they can't continue to indefinitely give you a free password manager, and it is one way, honestly, to get you kind of hooked on this. But it is something I strongly recommend and encourage people to use. My only hesitation, as you pointed out, Chad, is some people, maybe older people who don't have the fluency and all this stuff, may find it difficult to use. I mean, you have to learn how to use this properly, right?
Yeah.
And
it's a lot of overhead too. I mean, initially, you know, I've had a lot of friends and family reach out in the past, you know, week or two asking for some guidance, and you know, it's tedious at first to sit down but that's the thing, is if we don't do that, I mean, the first step in using a password manager, as we all know, is really creating an inventory. And it's amazing, right? And my wife just went through this a few months ago, and you know, she's like, you know, it's amazing all the stuff that I have accounts with that I haven't thought of in years. And you know, that may be the single most important value in using a password manager is, you know, if we don't know we have an account, we might think it's not important. Like if we have a department store login, we have like some, you know, third-party weird, you know, site we had to use for our kids one time. You know, those accounts can be used to take over identities. And because we don't think that way, you know, our mental models are very different until something happens to us. And then it's too late. And so it is a little bit tedious at first, but it's incredibly empowering to have that.
Yeah, it's totally worth it. I definitely encourage people to put in the effort to learn how to use a password manager, and 1Password is the one that I would recommend. So I want to go back to quickly our Forget Computers knowledge base and just point out that we do have this COVID-19 section where we've collected some articles about working from home and security. And one of them is improve your home internet. We talked a little bit about this last week, and then we put together some recommendations. Now, I want to be totally honest and open, and I think I mentioned this in the article. You know, we focus on business networks, and it's challenging to recommend someone put a business network in their home, because that is often more expensive, and it requires ongoing maintenance and upkeep and higher security standards than and maybe a home network. But a lot of people, because you're working from home now for several weeks, and there may be several more weeks, might want to invest in some basic upgrades. So we put together some recommendations for both small homes and larger multi-story homes for Wi-Fi. And we talked a little bit about what you can do with your internet service provider to maybe confirm that you're getting the best speeds that you can get and improve your experience. So give us feedback here or leave comments on the knowledge base. I thought we'd also talk a little bit about cloud storage. I think we have a few more minutes and maybe we want to continue the conversation next week. But we've all kind of been forced to use cloud storage by now if we're not already doing so. And I want to point out some of the top solutions that we see being used and implemented across our client base. Starting with Box is a very popular one and a very, I think, easy to use, affordable system that is fantastic for almost any office use, general office use, cloud storage. This is a product that can also go very deep with security and features, and don't get overwhelmed like you can with a lot of these features. Just start with the basics, and that is storing files, sharing files, collaborating on files. Where a Box might fall a little short is when you have a lot of large creative files like Adobe Creative Cloud, Adobe Acrobat, Adobe Photoshop. Sometimes that requires a more creative professional focused storage solution. And we found that Ignite.com is a great solution for creatives that have just terabytes and terabytes of data. So Ignite is a solution. And then OneDrive, can I go to OneDrive from here? I don't know what the domain is. I want to point out OneDrive because, so yeah, a lot of people use Office 365. We use Office 365. A lot of people have OneDrive as part of their Office 365 package. So if you don't want to invest in a third-party solution and you're already paying for Office 365, you can give OneDrive a try. It's just that you might run into some limitations or some frustrations. It's not quite as seamless or easy or as responsive as Box or Ignite, at least in my experience. I think Microsoft does a great job on the iOS side of things, and they've improved their products tremendously on the Mac side. But maybe it works better on the Windows side. I still feel, from a Mac perspective, using it on my Mac computer, it's not quite what I want it to be. Does that make sense, Chad or Michelle? I don't know if either of you have tried using it.
I have. I think they all have pros and cons. A lot of them are very, similar from my experience. They're all competitive. They're all trying to keep
the concepts are all the same, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it does come down to personal preference and sort of what the needs are of your team. And if you need help deciding what that is, let us know. There's one other I thought I would share, because if you're doing a lot of video work, this is one that's built for video, WireDrive, and I think they were bought by a company called Shift. So this is the new platform, and that's the thing. It's really hard for today for us to say, oh, use this one platform and it will do everything for you. Do you remember? Well, they're still around, but do you remember when multifunction printers first came out, Chad?
Oh yeah. The bane of our existence.
Yeah. Like multifunction printers, they do it all in one. That sounds like a great concept, except that they never actually did any one thing really well. They just kind of did everything well enough, good enough. And so if you want something that's like WireDrive's dedicated to video, if you do a lot of video, you may need something that's focused specifically on video, because something else like Box might be good enough for video. But if you want those extra features that are really custom to your video workflow, you might need something that's not an all-in-one solution. So I just wanted to get
really choosing the right technology and bending it to the will of the culture. rather than the other way around. And it's easy to do that. It's easy for us to think, oh, we're, Office 365, we're already paying for this. So let's just use all the tools that are in there. And let's bend our workflows and our culture to this thing that we use. And, I don't always have to do that. Sometimes that's appropriate and that makes sense. And sometimes it doesn't. So I agree with you, Ben. It's a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, it looks like we have an article Michelle posted a year ago on choosing a cloud-based file sharing service. And they mention OneDrive and Box and Dropbox is mentioned. Google Drive, I forgot to mention Google Drive. iCloud Drive, so far, great for personal use. I would not recommend it for company use today. And we have an article, which I can't think of the name of. It's how to choose new software. And I can't think of the name of it.
It's okay.
Yeah, I'll have to find it, because there was a great article we had about exactly what you said, Chad, about you don't want to just buy the software and try to make your team use it. You want to figure out what your team needs and what the workflow is, and then find something that will complement that. Let me see if workflow.
It's cheaper and easier, and I think this is a huge segue into shadow IT, because it's probably the biggest driver of shadow IT in an organization is a tool that's not fit for purpose, right?
Yeah.
When we kind of, not that everyone's Orwellian about this, every business is different, but some businesses are pretty Orwellian about the kinds of selections that they make about software. And if it's not friendly and it doesn't have a lot of value for the most people, they're going to find a way around it. And the way they find a way around it is they sign up for a personal Dropbox account or a personal Google Drive account, and they work around stuff because they need to get things done. And so it's not really their fault. It's really the leadership and the strategy's fault for not taking all these things into consideration and giving people a voice to say, does this work or does this not work, or what are some of the things that we need our tools to do for us day to day.
Mm-hmm. And I did find the article. It's right here, Framework for Selecting Technology. This actually came out of a digital asset management conference that I attended, but the framework itself is really great for how to choose your technology. And it talks about defining what your needs are and then looking and testing a solution. Too many people, just think, oh, this is the solution that's going to solve all my problems. And they don't really know what their problems are yet. So they need to define those problems. And this is a great article for that. Great framework. So we've reached 12:30 or almost, we're 1 minute shy. Anything else either of you want to mention before we sign off here for this week?
No, that's a pretty good chunk.
Yeah, that was a lot we threw at you. So yeah, reach out to our support desk if you have any questions. Look for the PII Protect security awareness training, or reach out to us if you don't have it yet. We can make it a priority to get that out to you. And we'll see you all next week.
Thank you.
Stay healthy.
Bye.
Bye.